is Forza Motorsport 2023 actually the worst game in the series? Hello and welcome back to another episode of Who's This Guy? The only show on YouTube that should be stored in a cool, dry place after opening. And yes, today I'm going to be doing something very, very silly and comparing Forza Motorsport 2023 to every single other game in the series to see how we got to this point and to find out if this is actually the worst game in the franchise. Is this a good idea? Probably not. Do I just need to let Forza 2023 go? Probably yes at this point, but I just can't move on. I don't think I can. I think I have a real problem, guys.
I don't know, Doc. I was playing Forza Motorsport 4 the other day and Jeremy Clarkson said Forza and I was like, Forza? I was saying Forza my whole life and people have been laughing at me in my videos every time I say Forza.
I think you might be reading a little too much into things.
Yeah, but the other day I lost like 7 subscribers and apparently I haven't been saying Forza correctly, so it's probably because of that.
Let me be frank. As your imaginary psychologist, I can't help you. Anything I'm suggesting is stuff you're just coming up with by yourself.
Oh yeah. Maybe I need to just stop worrying so much about Forza 2023.
What's the matter, Sam?
Nope.
Perhaps you should just play one more race.
I don't wanna.
Come on, it's gonna get good, I promise.
But don't look at you, you're not real.
You like the Nürburgring?
No, I don't want. Don't make me do it. No.
Whether or not you enjoyed or are still enjoying Forza 2023, I think it's fair to say that especially at launch, this thing was kind of a bummer. I'll link to my standalone review below if you'd like to watch it, but heads up, I made that video before I'd learned how to tech, you beautiful idiot. My disappointment with the most recent entry sparked a desire to go back to the earlier games and see how they compare. And also how much has changed in the 18 years that separates Forza Motorsport from Forza Motorsport. Which game in this series is the best? Which one is the worst? Let's find out together as we dive into the world of Forza, or Forza. You do not talk about Fight Club. There's going to be some obvious problems when comparing a game from 2023 to games that are way older, came out during different console generations, and also have inherent technical advantages and disadvantages that were out of the control of the developers at the time. So to make this a fair fight, we're going to have to set some ground rules.
Rule number 1.
First of all, and this is kind of a big deal, but no multiplayer. Obviously, it's very, very difficult or impossible to play the earlier Forza games online now, but also I thought the multiplayer in Forza 2023 was pretty good. It's definitely the best part of the game. So let's just give it a default victory in the multiplayer category and focus on the single player content of these titles.
Rule number 2.
When it comes to talking about visuals, we're gonna have to work on a sliding scale. Some of these games are very new and shiny, and some of them are old as fuck, relatively speaking. Meaning a direct technical comparison isn't really fair. So we're gonna be working more. Do you like looking at this thing? Or do you think this thing looks like shit? Extra points will be awarded for location variety, and also no points will be awarded. I'm making this shit up as I go.
Rule number 3.
I am by no means a racing game expert. I know it may alarm some of you, but once again, I'm not even a professional race car driver. What? So basically, if you want to hear about the differences between like the downforce and the tire pressure, I ain't your man. There's a bunch of other people on YouTube who are far smarter than I in those areas. This is also why I'm not going to do a sound comparison, because I don't know if this Ford Mustang sounds like a Ford Mustang. A lot of the cars in Forza 2023 sound like lawnmowers and they sound less like lawnmowers in the other entries, so there's my in-depth sound analysis. I'm more about, hey, does this game feel good? Does it pass the sniff test in terms of realism? I'd actually say Forza 5 smells the best, but I've only got digital copies of Forza 2023 and 6, so the results are inconclusive. Do these games have a decent progression system in place and a fun career mode? And does looking at them make me go, like, oh my god. If you're looking for a Forza series comparison but carried out by an absolute amateur, then you, my friend, are in the right place. Rule number 4.
I can't bring people back from the dead.
Okay, so with the aforementioned points in mind, Chapter 1. You might not think that's cricket. And it's not, it's motor racing. Let's begin this madness by talking about probably the most important aspect of any driving game, the pause screen. Fuck. I mean the driving. Always get that one wrong. Generally speaking, Forza's had this driving thing locked down for a while now. I definitely prefer the feeling of some other racing games, but it'd be disingenuous to say that any of these games controls poorly. The real surprise packet for me here was actually Forza Motorsport 1. Side note, do you guys remember color manuals? I mean, considering this was the series' first attempt at sim racing, the results are really impressive. The cars all have good weight, they're heavy. Just don't tell them that though, it'll hurt their feelings. And I was impressed with how realistic the grip feels. And the physics when you bop over the curbs or make contact with other vehicles all feels really spot on. The AI is quality here as well. They'll actively try to block you and each other. You'll see them making diving moves, running wide. It's all really good stuff. Not the best in class for this category, but a really nice surprise. Good job, Forza Motorsport 1.
Thanks.
Woo! As for which game drives the best, I'm gonna have to give that to Forza Motorsport 4. It's just a shame because it could have been even better if I had a Kinect. This game feels amazing to play. You get the grounded, grippy sensation that I love so much, but the fourth entry also received a big upgrade to the car's body dynamics. And if that's the wrong term, it's because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
The sum of the square roots of any two sides of an isosceles triangle is equal to the square root of the remaining side.
That's a right triangle, you idiot!
What I'm trying to say is that these cars roll and dip in what seems to be a really realistic fashion. And there's just enough looseness to make cornering feel dangerous but controllable. Also a quick note, yes, I know that you can customize the hell out of the way that these games control, but I'm just talking about baseline default controls here. But I do tend to turn the stability control all the way off just to make cornering a little more challenging. Good, yeah. Let's talk about which game I think controls the worst, and this one was a big surprise for me because I loved this when I was younger, but it's Forza Motorsport 2. Maybe I'm crazy. My doctor says I'm fine. The cars just feel floaty, like they're gliding over the track. It was really surprising going from game 1 to 2. I was shocked. I played hundreds of hours of this back when it first released, and going back to it was like catching up with an old friend while you're sitting there sipping on your coffee. It slowly dawns on you that they've become a flat earther.
Check, please.
I'll always love you, Forza Motorsport 2, but it might be time to go our separate ways. By the way, Forza Motorsport 6 gets an honorable mention in this category for having fantastic wet weather physics the first time out. Guys, how did we get 6 games deep into this series without wet weather? Rain is a pretty big part of racing in real life, thanks to like clouds and science and stuff. So to have a series where you're touting that these are incredibly realistic driving sims, but you're completely ignoring 50% of the potential weather on race day.
That doesn't make sense.
Anyway, the puddles in Forza 6 are great. The way your vehicle gets pulled into them and you can aquaplane at high speed. And they continue this in fine fashion in 7. So 6 and 7 both definitely deserve some recognition for their excellent wet weather driving. I don't really have much to say about 3 or 5 in this category because they both drive well. One thing I will say is 3 is the first time I saw the now infamous Forza AI shenanigans where the lead car shoots out to an unassailable lead early in the race. So it earns a little finger wag for that one. Oh, and guys, if I don't mention a game in one of these categories, by the way, you can just assume that I think it's totally fine, like neither terrible nor amazing.
I'm a man of few words and a question.
If you want me to get super exhaustive with a particular Forza game though, let me know below and I'll see what I can do. So what about our old friend here? Well, it definitely drives solidly enough, but I gotta say there's something about the driving in the 2023 game that I just find kind of boring. Even with the stability control turned all the way off, it just feels a bit safe. Like I find it almost impossible to spin out in this game. It's in no way bad. It's really, really solid. It's obviously building upon years of a really great foundation. It's just a bit lacking in like the thrills department. And I have to mention that the downgrade to the wet weather driving in the 2023 game is kind of immense. During rain-affected races, it just seems like the entire track is just vaguely slippery. There's no puddle build-up like in 6 and 7. All the dynamism from the previous 2 games is just gone. So I think I'd probably classify the 2023 game as not the best driving model in the series, but definitely not the worst either. Personally, for me, top of the pile in terms of the way these games feel is number 4. Forza 2 surprisingly felt the worst to me, and 2023 is a big fat chapter 2. There's no damage to the car except to the car itself. Let's talk about damage modeling because my god do I crash a lot when I play racing games. Now I do understand that this stuff gets tied up in a whole bunch of licensing bullshit and developers are very often limited to what they can implement. But the thing is,
I don't care.
if I do a roly-poly, spibbity-bobbity, I think my car should look more like this and less like this. And once again, Forza Motorsport 1 jumps out from behind a bush and is like, surprise, motherfucker! Because the damage damage modeling is really good. You can beat the shit out of these cars. You can knock out headlights and they'll stop casting during the night racing. And if you hit something hard enough, you can literally see your wheel alignment change, which is really cool. The only problem I actually have with the damage in the first game is that the bounding boxes around the cars are way too big. Meaning if you look even remotely closely, these cars actually never touch each other.
So ornery and sad, real wrong.
And actually, while I'm whinging about this, it also means you often get fishtailed by absolutely nothing. The damage gets a little bit worse from each game onwards. It's still pretty impressive in number 2, although they took the massive bounding boxes and massively overcompensated, because sometimes these cars touch a little too much, if you know what I mean. 3 and 4 are really solid again, but once we reach 5, we enter what I like to call Forza's generic scratched paintwork zone. Still working on the trademark for that one. Turn 10 made a big deal about how they'd overhauled the damage modeling for this game pre-release, but like, where is it? Although that's pretty much par for the course with the pre-release hype and what was actually delivered. Okay, so I think I'll give this category to the first game. Trust me, I'm as surprised as you are, but the damage modeling in Forza Motorsport 1 is really fantastic, aside from the whole force field thing. Worst damage in my view could really go to 5, 6, 7, or 2023. They all use generic scratches and dents, but I think I'm actually going to go with 5 because it started this trend in the first place. And speaking of Forza 5, let's talk about Crazy Ass God Rays. And speaking of Crazy Ass God Rays, let's talk about graphics. Chapter 3. I can't believe what's happening visually in front of my eyes. Probably at least 50% of the reason I like racing games so much is that they usually look pretty good. They're generally good showpieces for video game technology, and for as long as I can remember, I've been a bit of a graphics whore. And if you don't know what I mean by that, well, your parents will tell you when you're older. What I actually mean by that is that I'm able to overlook a lot of flaws in a game as long as it looks nice. Like when I finished The Order, because it looks so good, even though playing through it was slightly more fun than that time I had a collapsed lung. Now, as I mentioned, we're working on a sliding scale here based on when the games came out, track variety, and also just the general idea of like, hey, do you like what you see? Forza Motorsport numero uno is really interesting in this category. Being the oldest game and running at 30 frames per second on the original Xbox, you'd think this one was headed straight for the bottom of the pile, but just hang on. First of all, this game has seriously cool location variety. I feel like you're always looking at something interesting in Forza Motorsport 1, whether it's an admittedly pixelated vista as you hit the crest of a mountain, or when you're weaving around trucks at the shipyards or racing around Tokyo at night. It's clear the developers were flexing their creative muscles when designing these tracks. Unfortunately, even with the sliding scale, I'm still going to have to knock Forza Motorsport 1 out of the running for best looking game in the series. Don't get me wrong, it does look good, though admittedly I don't think it holds up all that well with its contemporaries from the same era. Auto Modelista, you look so cool, why you play so bad? Motorsport 1 is also kind of inconsistent on the visual front. There's moments where it has nice lighting and it looks good, and then it has these other moments where it only looks slightly better to me than a PlayStation 1 game. Likewise, we'll be saying farewell to the second game. It's absolutely plagued by that thing that happened with a lot of early Xbox 360 games where it looks like Vaseline on the camera lens and all the skyboxes are all blown out. You feel like you're constantly driving around in a dream sequence. The big killer for me with 2 though was it loses a lot of the track variety from the first game. It replaces a lot of these cool fantasy tracks with in-field test tracks that all look and feel the same.
Oh dear.
However, Forza 2 does look amazing when this happens. My disc is so badly scratched because I played it so much. I don't know if you can see that, but I bet you didn't know these drivers don't have feet. Motorsport 3 is a pretty massive step up from 2 visually, and if this category was best looking menus, this game would win in a walk. 3 also brings back the sweeping vistas that we had in the first game, along with much better track variety. Though don't look too closely or you'll notice the background photos like sliding across each other. Let's be real though, if we're looking at these games from the 360 era, Forza 4 is just stunning. This game still holds up today. The car models are even so good that you'll find some of them showing up in Forza 2023, which is both a compliment to Forza 4 and a shocking indictment on Forza 2023.
Built from the ground up to take advantage of the Xbox Series consoles.
The lighting is the element that really shines in the 4th game. They put a lot of focus on the way the sunlight hits cars and bounces off. Anytime you turn a corner into the sunshine in this game is breathtaking. Forza 5 decided to take this sunshine and turn it up to like 1 billion. Let's just calm down a bit, guys. Credit where credit is due. The 5th game does look incredible, but this God Ray business is a little bit over the top. I think Forza 6 is a really underrated game in general. Forza had a bit of a stink on it after 5, more on that in a moment. And 6 was an unfortunate casualty where it was really overlooked at the time. And visually, it's the same story. Not only did they take the overblown sunshine from 5 and tone it down into something more realistic and pleasing to the eye, but their implementation of wet weather racing for the first time in the series is absolutely spectacular. However, nothing in this series can really hold a candle, in my opinion, to Forza Motorsport 7 from a visual standpoint. Going back to this game, I was like, what the fuck? This looks better than Forza 2023, even though it's a console generation behind.
This is the most technically advanced racing game ever made.
The car models are so detailed, the lighting is stunning. When the track is wet in this game and the sky is reflecting off it, it's just amazing. The only thing I don't like about the presentation in the 7th game is that they're very proud of their wobble tech.
I like it. It's quite a good orchestral instrument. But
It's cool and all that the individual components have movement and vibration, but if your mirrors and windscreen wipers are rattling around this much, I think you need to pull over before that shit falls off. On the whole though, I think this is easily the best looking game in the series. 4 is pretty amazing, especially for the time it came out, but 7 is just a total knockout. They made a big deal about these rocks pre-release, and I can confirm that they look like rocks. But where does the 2023 entry fit into all this? Visually speaking, it's probably the most inconsistent of the bunch. Sometimes it looks really beautiful, but then a lot of the time it looks really like desaturated and blown out or washed out. Some of these cars look so good, and then some of them look like they're like several console generations old, and it turns out a lot of them are. For me, the biggest visual gut punch with the 2023 game was after 7 came out, my mind raced with possibilities. If 7 looked this good, and then they're releasing 2023 exclusively on the new consoles,
Built from the ground up to take advantage of the Xbox Series consoles.
just imagine what they're going to do with this thing. And then it came out and it just looked good, I guess. It's not a bad looking game. It's just not the technical powerhouse that we've come to expect with Forza entries.
This is the most technically advanced racing game ever made.
Also, the visual variety in this game at the time of recording is really woeful. All we have are stock standard racetracks, like where's the Bernese Alps? They put so much work into Dubai for the last game and it's just nowhere to be seen. Where are my rocks, goddammit? So I guess it goes without saying that 7 goes to the top of my list in terms of visuals, and I'm going to be pretty controversial here and put number 2 at the bottom. Mine is admittedly a bit of a mess at times, but I personally really just can't stand this early 360 smeared glowy look. I'd rather look at the first game even when the Nürburgring looks this bitty. And the severely toned back track variety doesn't do too any favors either. As for 2023, well, it's probably somewhere in the middle of the pack. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's terrible. I hope we get some more exciting tracks added in the future to spice up the visual variety at least. Right now, it's really, really dull. Speaking of not putting enough content into the game at launch, Chapter 4. There's nothing wrong with the car, except that it's on fire. I couldn't really think of a good way to explain what this next category is, so I think I've just decided to call it the ick factor and hope you guys know what I'm talking about.
probably yucky for sure.
See, the Forza series started out as this really earnest, nerdy thing that felt like it was made by people that loved cars and racing and video games and the people that play them. But at some point, things started to change and begin to feel a bit gross. Actually, it's super easy to identify when this started to happen. It seems weirdly appropriate that this game launched alongside the Xbox One, a console which at launch represented the absolute epitome of corporate sliminess. In this hand, you had Microsoft launching a console where they thought it was a good idea to make sharing games impossible. I'll probably make a video about this one day because the story of the Xbox One launch is insane. And in this hand, you had Forza Motorsport 5, in which Turn 10 thought it was a good idea to add paid XP boosters.
Well, that's the greatest clanger I've ever seen in my life.
That's the worst decision I've seen.
XP boosters piss me off in Assassin's Creed, and they sure as hell piss me off here. Hey, do you want to give us some money to speed up your progression so you can play less of this game that you just paid full price for? Fuck off! It also introduces this nasty feeling in the back of your mind, like every time you finish a race and you see that XP bar creeping up, you can't help but wonder if your progress has been throttled, if the entire design of the game has been built around frustrating you into having such a slow progression that you end up caving and buying some XP boosters. Very not cool, Forza 5. It certainly drives really well and it looks immaculate, but it can go straight to the bin for this one. Also, I'm convinced noticed the world map has been populated with all these little markers everywhere to try to convince you that there's more locations in this game than there actually are? And if you're going to come back at me and say, well, why'd they put them in the middle of the ocean, Sam? That's how dumb they think you are. And although they got rid of the microtransactions 4, 6, and 7, they introduced this weird booster card system. I guess because the entire video game industry at this point was putting cards into everything. These cards let you boost your XP, but also do things like make your car go faster and make your brakes work more efficiently. What? This shit just feels really weird to have in a sim racer. But also with the aforementioned ick factor, I couldn't find a way to spend real money on these cards in 6 or 7, but they just look and feel very microtransaction-y and I don't like it. They 100% look like they were planning to charge money for these cards and then they just changed their mind at the last minute. Or maybe you could originally buy these with money and then they turned that off like they did with Battlefront 2. I probably should have looked that up, but I didn't.
I'm a professional.
But how icky is the 2023 game, Sam? I hear no one say, and I'm really glad you asked. This game feels gross to me because it feels arrogant and sloppy. It's the first game in the entire series that to my eye gives off this vibe of like, yeah, they'll do. Throw it on the market, they'll buy it. For a series that was always basically technically watertight, this thing is crawling with bugs. I detailed some in my original review that I won't show here because it literally requires an epilepsy warning there so bad, but again, I'll link to that original review below, and there's an appropriate epilepsy warning just before I show that crazy shit.
It's a ghost car!
Things have definitely improved since launch, but there's still reflections not loading in time before the camera cuts. Even the main car on the main menu, the one that doesn't dynamically change, unlike in every single previous entry other than the first game, the reflections on this car don't load in time before the menu appears. There's the rearview mirror flickering at the start of every race, or even the way the AI doesn't know how to drive on these rolling start races without hitting the cars in front of you. It's all just so goddamn sloppy in a series that had never been sloppy before. And what about this whole built from the ground up thing over 6 years that has caused so much controversy?
Built from the ground.
Well, I put on my detective hat and I discovered something really interesting. See, I noticed that in every single previous entry, right from the start of the Xbox 360 era through till Forza Motorsport 7, the reflections in the wing mirrors of the cars when you're in chase cam are always on the wrong side. So if you've got an object on this side of the car, the reflection appears in the other wing mirror. It's something you'd probably never notice if you weren't looking for it, but to me, the fact that it appears in every single game is a real indication that they're all sort of building off the same foundations. So what about Forza 2023? Surely if the game was built
From the ground up,
they would have corrected this and we wouldn't see the same thing happening here. So I got my butt out to Laguna Seca, positioned my car above some speed strips, and my heart skipped a beat when I zoomed all the way in on the wing mirror that was positioned above the red and white speed stripes, and I saw a little line of red. Oh my god, this game was built from the ground up. What does it all mean? I hope everyone understands that this was a bit. Forza 2023 was clearly not built from the ground up, and it makes me feel gross. However, it doesn't have paid XP boosters, so the latest entry can dodge this bullet, and Forza 5 can go fuck itself.
Oh, shit, buddy.
The first 4 games don't really need to be mentioned in this category, in my view. They just feel like genuinely passionate projects made by people that love cars and video games, and most importantly, the Forza community. So, 5 wins the title of grossest game in the series, closely followed by 2023. 6 and 7 get away with this one, but I've got my eye on them. And if you think this category was super weird, I agree. Chapter 5. If the gloves weren't off before, and they were, they sure are now. Look, I'm not going to go ahead and say that this is a universal opinion. The Forza 2023 career mode, the Builders Cup, is pretty bloody awful. The main issue I have with it is it's just so boring. Gone is all the variety, replaced with circuit race after circuit race. But hey, at least the progression system is incredibly unsatisfying. There's so many little things that add up to me getting very angry. Like how the game doesn't tell you if you can afford a car to take place in the series you've just selected. So you jump in and watch the introduction cinematic because you want to see all the nice shiny cars, get to the other side of it. I know you can't do this series.
Are you kidding me?
Even the very first game had the common sense to show you if you either had a car in your garage or could afford one to take part in the series before selecting it. At least you're now able to skip practice without going into the practice and quitting out of it, which is the way it was at launch. What What the fuck? I feel like the progression is really unsatisfying as well. When you finish a race, you go to this screen and your driver XP is just up here in this little thing. And I swear you never see this bar move. Am I missing something? Can you let me know below if you've ever seen this move? Every other game in the series, even Yucky Gross 5, makes a point of showing you your progress when you finish races, making it really satisfying seeing your driver level and your car level increasing. It creates a really great sense of momentum. I really love the way 7 does this, how it shows you what rewards are coming up when you level up next, so you always know what you're working towards. But the 2023 entry just has this vibe of general apathy. It's like, hey, you want to do some races? Okay. Yeah. Here you go. Here's a grey menu and a circuit race. And once you've done that, there'll be another one. Once you've done that one, there'll be another one after that. Oh, you want to do a different type of event? Maybe play one of these instead. This game just doesn't give a fuck.
We cannot wait for you to get your hands on this incredible game.
So clearly, guys, I'm not a fan of the career mode in Forza 2023. But can anything give it a run for its money? No, they're all better. Even the very first game makes every race finish satisfying. And the career provides a steady drip feed of new vehicles and event types like hill climbs and descents, time trials, drag races, along with the traditional circuit races. How did we progress 18 years and the career mode in this is more involved and has more varied content than this?
It's our most comprehensive game ever.
But which game has the best single player career? Well, I'm going to pull a little bit of a wimpy move here and make like a split decision between 4 and 7. I love the world map structure from 4. The way the game moves you from race to race, it feels really propulsive. Also, not to sound like a dummy, but this career mode taught me the real world locations of all these racetracks that I've raced around on in so many different games. It also has great variety. It's the first time we see Top Gear events, which injects a much needed sense of playfulness into the series. Basically, if you like a more guided career mode, then I think 4 is probably the game for you. If, however, you like the more recent Forza approach of like, here's just a billion different series and race types and classes and historical racing and just do whatever you want, then 7's probably the go. Just ignore the weird booster card stuff. Still got my eye on you, 7. I feel bad for Forza Motorsport 6 once again here, because 7 essentially just takes everything from 6 and just wraps it up in a nicer presentation. Plus the introduction of driver gear and the excellent progression system where you can see the items that you're going to unlock when you hit the next driver level. 2 definitely needs to get a little love here. It introduced the whole guided career idea to the series. Like when you come out of a race, it's like, here are all of your options. What do you want to do next? Special shout out to the season structure in game number 3. I really love this approach, with seasons that get increasingly longer with more events the longer you go through your career. As a massive nerd, I also really appreciate the touches of having your season stats at the end screen. I'm honestly split right down the middle between 4 and 7, but if you had a super soaker to my head, 4. I just like how propulsive it feels, and it doesn't have the weird cynical undertones that sometimes pop up in 7. So career modes, 2023 is bottom of the heap. What a flaming pile of a single player mode.
Our all new car building focused single player career.
4 and 7 are kind of equal winners depending on what style of career you like, and Forza Motorsport 1 surprises once again. Chapter 6, a sad ending, albeit a happy one. So after playing hundreds of hours of these games and comparing and contrasting them against the most recent entry, I think I'm ready to present my findings. And I won't bury the lead. Do I think Forza 2023 is the single worst entry in the series?
Yes! Yes!
And please, again, I'm not talking about the multiplayer. I'm talking about all of these games purely as single player career mode experiences. And honestly, one of the reasons I was excited to make this video was to return to Forza 2023 in the hopes that something would have changed, that something would click this time around. But as a single player experience, this game is just shit. It doesn't matter to me that sometimes it looks great or that it drives well, because at the end of the day, when the career structure and the progression is so uninvolved, when the game is so devoid of personality, when it feels like it doesn't care if you're playing it or not, it kind of makes anything else null and void. But which game in the series do I think is best? Well, I'm probably going to surprise absolutely no one and say for me it's game number 4.
So predictable.
I don't want to get too crazy here, but I honestly think if this had wet weather racing, it might have landed somewhere near the top of my favorite racing games ever. It drives amazingly, the career is deep and rewarding, and it still looks goddamn spectacular. I will say it was a bit of a close run thing between 4 and 7. There's absolutely astonishing visuals in 7, almost shoved 4 out of the way for me. But ultimately, I think that I just prefer the more guided approach that 4 takes to its career mode, and 7 has the weird booster card system. No thanks. Game number 1 was definitely the biggest surprise out of this whole thing for me. This was the first time I'd played it, and it was really cool to see that this series was pretty great right from the start. Number 2 was unfortunately a bit disappointing to return to, especially because before I went back to it for this video, if you'd asked me what my favorite Forza game was, I probably would have told you it was number 2. But I think I've learned the hard way that because it was my first Forza Motorsport game, and I also played the hell out of it at a really pivotal time in my life, I think I've been pouring a lot of nostalgia points into this one. It's definitely still a good game, just not quite the amazing experience that I'd built up in my mind over the years. I'm realizing in this moment that I haven't said much about 3, but I guess that's because it's not really a controversial entry. It's incredibly solid. It's where the series really cemented itself, and it definitely holds up today. When you're in the admittedly really undermodeled cockpit, if you have a digital clock in your car, it actually shows the local time on the display. So that's a fun little fact. But yeah, it doesn't really do anything badly, but it doesn't do anything super spectacularly either. Aside from these menus, my God, can we just navigate every game via the Forza 3 menus, please? And 5, even the crowd in 5 is unimpressed with it. And 6, I have a lot of respect for. It's almost like the little engine that could have the series. It's an undervalued workhorse that put in a really, really solid performance and lays some excellent foundations for the future. Ultimately, though, I'm really glad I did this because the 2023 entry had given me some serious Forza blues. It was so nice to work my way through the series and realize again that these games are really special. So here's to Forza Motorsport. What an amazing, interesting, wild ride it's been. Thanks for watching my video, everyone. I know it's a bit longer than usual, so I appreciate you making it to the end. I'm curious for your thoughts on the Forza series as a whole, or if there's a favorite you have or a least favorite one you have, just let me know below. And also let me know if there's any other games you'd like me to take a look at. I do take requests. My name's Sam. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.
Some of these cars look alright.
I told you it'd get better.
You knucklehead.